Good afternoon, everyone. We had a great series of discussions, speeches this morning, addressing the future of technology, the future of information. On this panel, we'll look at where that merges, fuses with the power of education, where we are today in education and how that has the power to transform our future. Before I begin, I'd like to welcome on stage with me panelists, Mr. Muhammad Ali Hajamidin. He's the CEO of Penang Skills Development Center, a state-of-the-art training, education facility that works in industry and trains industry professionals from the industry itself. I'd also like to welcome on stage Ms. Rio Tanaka. Ms. Rio Tanaka is a PhD student at the University of Tokyo, Japan, and is also a fellow at the Society for the Promotion of Science. Her work has focused in depth on looking at policies influencing education. As I've mentioned, this morning we looked at policy, education, we looked at the power of technology and how it has brought about a wide information revolution. An information revolution that has disrupted everything we know about how we've lived our lives for centuries, since man discovered fire. From how we seek healthcare, how we communicate, how we commute, but also how we transfer knowledge from one generation to the other. If we go back enough in history, we'll see that emperors and kings and queens restricted education. Education was a luxury for the few, for the children of emperors and kings, for the clergymen. That created a massive power gap in society between the educated and the masses. If you fast forward to the 19th century, and as the industrial revolutions kicked in and the engines began to churn and the trains and the steams began to roll, what happened was factories, production lines required an immense need for skilled labor. And with that came the introduction of the classroom, the traditional curricula, the university. Fast forward to today, we have the information revolution. Anyone with a device and an internet connection has the power, has the access to almost all the sciences and literature since man began to write. And we've seen young people, like many here, from their dorm rooms, in their first year of university or even before entering university, disrupt entire markets, disrupt entire economies, introduce entirely new, innovative entrepreneurial ideas into the world, from social media to technology that is transforming how we interact with technology, AI. All of that comes at a critical core question. We are the most connected, the most informed, the most global generation that has ever lived. Where does that put us? Where does that put us in terms of equipping this generation and the next to maximize how we learn and how we teach? I'm going to throw the question of, let's begin with what are our current challenges? Where are we right now in terms of the issues and the challenges of education? Whoever wishes to proceed, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. And as Mr. Munir has introduced, I'm Rio Tanaka, and I'm from University of Tokyo, Japan. And so what is the current challenge? Well, I think, yes, as many of the speakers already talked about expansion of the technology and how human beings live in the world full of its impact is the most important challenge, I think. And so AI or robotics or automation, they say that kind of technology will take out our jobs. And it has some bad impacts, but we can translate it into this way as well. So this kind of technology will reduce our tasks, and we can use the time for other things. So it's all up to us whether we make it or break it with this technology and what that brings to us.
Okay, we talk about you ask about challenges, right? Let me put it, in a very layman term. Since we have too much information, right? You mentioned about long ago, education is only for certain group of people. Why? Because of limitations of informations or to reach the informations. But now the information is everywhere. So everybody have access to the informations. So the biggest challenge now for anybody, especially for youth, right, is to define from that information they get what is right and what is wrong. That is become a biggest challenge, right, with the piece of information. I give you one good example. This I'm going to go back to the audience, the youth who are here. This morning, we have a break at 11 a.m. What you observe during that 11 a.m. After the break, you can see every single table full of foods, half at food wastage, right? The basic information is actually food wastage is bad, but none of the people realize it and understand it. So this is the biggest challenge, which is actually to determine something, what is right and wrong. We're talking about the future, we're talking about a lot of things, but fundamentally, the key challenges for a country, for a nation, for a school, for universities, is to make sure that whatever things that they deliver, to able the people who are being given the education and knowledge to use it to determine what is right and what is wrong.
Right. I want to encourage you all to tweet your questions using the hashtag #OwnYourFuture. Hashtag #OwnYourFuture. I'll receive the questions here and we will engage it as part of the discussion. On that point, identifying those challenges. Young people today, a lot of people sitting in this room who are students, are looking at many challenges ahead of us, from climate change to the environment to food wastage. Many of these challenges require a degree of creativity, a degree of entrepreneurship to address these challenges and the many other challenges that perhaps we're not aware of today, but will spring up tomorrow and in the decades ahead. How do we create education systems how do we structure curriculums? How do teachers and schools and universities design the bedrock of a teaching system that not only teaches for students to leave university or school to get a job, but to be at the very forefront of change, at the very forefront of entrepreneurship, at the cutting edge of their sciences and technologies and field? How do we shape those kind of curriculums and schools and education systems?
Okay, I was hoping you asked the question. I'm just kidding. Okay, this is fundamental, right? Used to be, we would like to go and get this knowledge. We send our people, we benchmark other countries, we learn. But now technology is converging and it enables us, right? The learning curve becomes faster. the learning method become different. So you can learn practically everywhere, even while sleeping, right? So what to learn is important, and who should drive this? It is important. Like you have mentioned, every single entity in one country will try to embrace so-called what you mentioned about the future, the fourth industrial revolutions. Educations, ministries or systems, Ministry of Human Resources, ministry, every single entity, universities will try to go and define what is relevant. So in this process, what will happen, everybody will engage whoever which is they think appropriate with their own idea, and they will try to implement it, in their system, regardless of universities, colleges, workforce in different area. But since the amount of information out there is a lot, the first thing should be defined by the country itself to decide where the country is actually moving, to set the directions very clearly, so that every single entity in the country, regardless of education ministry or Ministry of Human Resources, different ministry can align. So this is where the country is heading. This is what applicable for the country, and they should follow that structure, define one structure goal, which is what I'm trying to say, should start with one vision. The country is moving to manufacturing base. So every single entity should look into that as a direction and create their knowledge. But we don't see in many cases happen that particular way. Everybody start to define their own, start to produce their own talent. That's where we see a lot of challenges the country is facing.
Will that put students in a box if we are predefining industries, if we are predefining the context of what we're teaching, prioritizing certain industries? Does that put certain students in a box where it halts creativity or growth in other sectors?
Yes, it will. But we have to decide what is actually the objective. For example, if we allow everybody to do it as it is, they go and look for it. University students saying that, I see in this element there's a future opportunity. They go invest their time, go acquire that particular program, and they learn. What happened when they come out, a bunch of them, there is no job opportunity in that particular area, which is they're out of context at what their country can offer. So the important is actually, yes, the boxing will happen, but we should balance it up. Fundamentally, some group of students should go beyond because you need the future, but most of the students should look into what available in the country.
Right. Mr. Naka, what's your take? How do we build future-proof education systems that encourage entrepreneurship in our schools?
Well, actually, I think I prefer to have more generalist kind of education because, well, the issues popping up in this changing world is, something so broad, and you need to understand those issues from a broader context, and you need to have a broad mind to get interested in the issues and also be able to come up with the solutions. And also in more practical sense, they say that one people will have 6 jobs in his or her life in, 10 years. So in that sense as well, we need to train our students to become more
versatile.
To take any job after they graduate.
So on that point, I find it very interesting. You mentioned that over the course of our careers, especially students who are graduating today, they will have an average of 6 jobs throughout their career. But also, many of us will also not have a degree at all. I think Harvard did a study that indicated only 6.7% of the world population have a college degree. And that drops even more significantly to bar 1% who go to pursue more advanced education. In that context, and in the context of us switching to over 6 jobs during our careers, how do we create education systems? Or maybe address it to us. How do we allow ourselves to continue to grow, to continue to learn, to continue to be on top of knowledge that seems to be increasing every single day? How do we beat the curve? Mr. Naka, please.
Well, yeah, we need kind of paradigm shift regarding this. And yeah, so we need to realize that we need to adapt the changing society, changing world. And yeah, so to adapt to that change, we need to change our learning habits, which means, yeah, we need to learn by ourselves. It's called like self-directed learning. And yeah, especially in Asian countries, we tend to like cram for the exams and seek for the marks in the exams. But yeah, it involves a lot of memorizing work, but the skill of memorizing is not useful anymore in the new age. So yeah, rather we need to train our students to be able to learn by themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah, decide how to learn, and yeah, maybe we need to provide some environment or project or maybe subjects in the universities to allow them to try out how they learn.
Yes, and I find that extremely important because in societies where we only teach children information, they limit themselves to the information that is provided to them. Whereas in societies or in education systems where we teach children, we teach students how to learn, how to acquire knowledge, they become lifelong learners. Mr. Mohammed, you are CEO of a training and development center that works in industry. So you are at the heart of changes that are happening every day. How does industry, how do practitioners, and how do students who are sitting here today gear their minds towards the future of a constant learning? Please.
Well, we train basically workforce and also graduates from around the world before they enter the workforce. So what we find out over the period of years based on the data that what we have is actually, the institutions, the technology that we have here is very good in giving them almost all the solutions. You have this problem and these are the solutions. And with the technology advancement, you can actually get all these solutions. So the more and more we see one particular skills is missing on the students, which is we found is very alarming. You know what skill is that? Mm-hmm. Common sense. Because they are so dependent on the technology to solve every single problem. Whenever the problem has tweaked, because life, the problem will change, will adapt, they have problems solving it. So these are the biggest investment that what we are looking at, how to enable the graduates from any other institutions to have these creativity skills. How the current workforce, when the technology converge, because the fourth industrial revolution is conversion of 3 different technology: operation technology, information technology, and finance technology. So the workforce itself that has been there for so long as an engineers and so on, whenever the technology converge, they have a challenges to address it. Because for us, fundamentally, the analytical capability, the common sense capability is not being emphasized. So if any other skills that I think the institute should look into other than giving them technology, is about the ability to creatively solve problem and use their common sense.
With the information revolution, right? With the exponential amount of knowledge that is increasing every single day, we open ourselves up to new sciences, new fields of education, new interests. Myself, everyone on the panel, and everyone in this room here today, we all have our own very unique backgrounds, our very unique interests. How do we encourage that kind of creativity? How do we allow students to step out of their comfort zone, or maybe into their comfort zone, whilst in education? How do we give them that degree of flexibility to work or to study or to learn what they like, while at the same time covering the bases? And this is an important question today because knowledge is increasing. It's not decreasing. So how do we begin to specialize or prioritize what is important while also putting the human, the student, the individual at the center of that education system? Mr. Naka, please.
Well, I think participation is one solution for this challenge. And yeah, if we allow the students to participate, we can get, different opinions or different uniqueness. And it will enhance the quality of the, in the classroom or the knowledge we can share in the education. And also it will, encourage students to be more curious and, to be interested in other things as well.
Mr. Mohammed, I want you to answer this question as well, but I have a Twitter question here directly on your food wastage point. It says, most countries have the right policies in place. How instead do we encourage effective implementation? How do we overcome the barriers to mindset change? I'm not sure which would you'd like to take the first, but I think to some degree they merge in terms of mindset change, right? How do we step out of the box? Please.
Well, let's look at an example. I believe that you may have noticed this. Like if you travel a lot, you may notice this. Same event if you went to some countries, right, which have a well-established, let's say any of these European country, same setting environment, you will not see as much as this much of food wastage. Is it that shows that they teach the student in a school saying that you don't waste your food? No, they don't do that. It's all about giving them the right approach of educations during their fundamental time so that they can decide what is right and what is wrong. Whereas in most of the eastern side, we like to give a lot of complete things. You don't do that, you don't do this, you do that, you do this. I think this is something that we should, think to disable it. We should disable giving instructions to people, putting a signboard, looking into how to enforce it, rather than give it in a way that I mentioned about common sense, the knowledge to them so that they will decide what is right and wrong. So I don't believe, we need to go and teach the students saying that, when you eat in a cafe, make sure that you take enough and you don't do wastage. I think that is something that we should keep away. We should look into more holistic way. You do not need a technology in order to do these things. The culture, or, it is within the religion. So that is something that we are missing. We are taking out personal development cultures from the mainstream educations. I think that's something that we should look at.
There's a lot of people are asking, since there is, since we mentioned that 6.7% of people around the world have a college degree, we have an overwhelming majority, over 93%, who don't have a college degree. People are asking, in terms of policy, in terms of education, how do we bridge that gap? Or should we bridge that gap? Is education moving more towards very tailored, very customed education routes? Do we look at education, do we look at our lives, and do we define exactly the steps, the very focused programs and courses in education that we should tackle? Or is standard, the base foundation, traditional education the way to go? Mr. Naka.
Well, I don't think traditional, you said, or like the basic kind of education, and the education that can be called as a new kind of education is something that cannot coexist. So yeah.
There's going to be a need to.
Yeah, I think we can employ some new teaching techniques or.
Yeah. Is a college degree, Mr. Mohammed, is a college degree as important today as it was 10 years ago? Is it going to be as important as it is today, as it will be 10 years from now?
Well, I think this is the biggest paradigm shift that we do have. You know, we always think about, when you talk about education, it is college degree, it is college universities, it is a piece of certification, but that is not. Education is actually, you go and acquire that knowledge, formally or informally, and use that knowledge to achieve something. So if we still doing, especially developing countries or countries are starting to develop, they always have this very not accurate paradigm telling that education is only this way. You have to go and get this degree, and then you go and solve the problem. That's why we can see that when we talk about we're going to address the issue of education in some countries where 20% or 30% of the people are non-educated, they're going to go and give them education. The point is actually why. You may disrupt if you go for that kind of systematic college certificate type of education. You should look into it, as I mentioned earlier, what the country or what the state situation is about. You do not want to go to some country do not have a proper electricity and even internet to talk about giving them data analytics programs. You need to look into what are the programs that are important for that particular country that will enable. If you do that, you give an education, then the people will transform and they solve the problem. So I think we should look at, I agree on your statement saying that, you know, now we are going back to the original way of educating, which is mean that you mentioned people do not want this degree. Degree will be obsolete. Because why? It goes back to the original terms of education. You learn to solve something or to do something. That's why that people say that soon college degree will be obsolete, because you do not need that. You need particular knowledge to solve problems.
I want to encourage maybe 2 or 3 questions from the floor. But before we do, the Education Minister of Malaysia, Mr. Majdi Malik, unfortunately couldn't make it today. However, he has provided us with a video, a short video to contribute on our discussion that we will have playing very shortly. In the meantime, if anyone has any questions to the floor, please raise your hand, and as the video ends, we'll take 2 or 3 questions from the floor. I believe the video will play in a few moments. Any questions from the floor? Yes, in the far corner. Gray top, please. Two minutes? Okay. 2 questions.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jero Hamans. I am one of the Rohingya activists. Actually, I was expecting the Education Minister of Malaysia because you see my peoples in Myanmar, they have been struggling a lot, and 1,000 people are being killed and 1,000 girls are being raped, and still there is no solution from international community and from the NGOs or from neighboring countries. So my question is here, in our country, we are not allowed to study. We have decades and decades, our generations, our youth, our forefathers, they lost their life without educations. And even in Bangladesh, there is 1 million over Rohingya refugees displaced. And still, there is no education. In neighboring country, they never think about our futures. Everyone's wasting our life. And is there any way how only the education is very important for our community, and I hope everyone will deeply concerned about our futures. Our life is going wasting every day, decades and decades, and there is no still solution from anyone. So I want the panel to doubly consider and recommend to the Minister of Malaysia to think about our future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I think there's something very important about this question is, at the core, how do we make education more inclusive, but also in places where, particularly around the world, in the Middle East, where there is war, where there is conflict, how do we make education more inclusive in very desperate and very difficult locations? Before we come to that, maybe I'll take another question. From this side of the room? Yes, at the very back.
Hi, my name is Ahmed, and my question is, how do you foresee that academic certificates will be highly required in the future job market, especially after the new policy of job which was done by the giant leading company in the world, example of like Google, Facebook, and etc. They have job out the requirements of academic certificate in hiring their employees. Like, how far do you see that other rest of the world will follow? And in your estimating time, and how good do you see that point? Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we'll start with that question. As major corporations drop the need for traditional education, what kind of workplace and what kind of how will education systems adapt to that? Mr. Naka, would you like to start? It should work.
Well,
how will education systems begin to adapt to corporations, to large companies, or even small companies that will not require the traditional route of university, college, kind of education? Will education system begin to tenure, to create very specific niche education patterns or systems for students, or will we stick to what we already have, where hundreds of students can come in every year and study the exact same content and go on to produce that in industry? Mr. Mohammed, yeah, please, no problem.
Okay. That's wonderful questions, right? As we mentioned just now, saying that education is taking path where it's supposed to go. You have to learn certain skills that require you to solve a problem, and then you go and solve it. That's why that the big corporation is actually heading to that directions. The challenge is actually for education system, even in Malaysia. I wish the minister is here. We are so structured frame. Design education system because we follow British systems, right? If you want to be an electronic engineer, for example, you have to go through this Malaysian quality framework, blah, 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 blah. So if this is not loosened up, I'm not saying abolish. If this framework that every single country has it, right? It doesn't be loosened up to suit what the customer need, where the industry need. The education system in the country will fail to produce employable graduates. So that needs to be a thought. It's a big challenge in Malaysia. We have a very strong, rigid system that disable the knowledge to be given to the graduate. It says that you must learn this in order to get this certificate. That need to happen. And I hope more and more companies in the world, or even in Malaysia, everywhere, go for the knowledge, don't go for the certificate. Value the capability of the students based on their knowledge on addressing your challenges, and not the degrees that they have, because the additional knowledge, the fundamental knowledge can be given. Not all the job requires fundamentals. Yes, some hardcore engineering need the fundamental knowledge, so you need to have the structure. But most of the application-based solution jobs doesn't need that. So I hope the push from the industries will be higher, and I really hope the education system in any country are open enough to look into this so that they can produce graduates that are employable.
And I really like that because it reverses the equation. We seek knowledge to solve solutions. We become problem solvers as opposed to acquiring knowledge but not knowing how to apply it later on. I've been told that the video is now ready to play. Will it be on the screen behind us? Here we are.
I'm Mazli Malik, the Minister of Education, Malaysia. Firstly, I apologize for not making the conference due to the last minute meeting. It is a very important meeting that I have to attend. And secondly, I would like to congratulate the organizers for putting this event together. As you know, the theme for today is on owning your future, which is an especially relevant theme for education as well. I don't have to go into how important it is to ensure our students are future-proof and how we should incorporate technology in education. I thought I'd spend some time sharing with you how education in Malaysia specifically is adapting to the demands of the future. Number one, emphasis on values-based education. While technology is important, what the new economy needs more are resilient, adaptable lifelong learners. This is why the key is to ensure in our chase to equip our children with the latest technology, we don't neglect the core parts that make us humans. Learning needs to be joyful, relevant, and be done with passion. Values like love, happiness, and mutual respect need to be inculcated first and foremost. Therefore, to encourage children to love knowledge and to enjoy learning, one of the first things we have done is to abolish exams for Standard 1, Standard 2, and Standard 3. This is to make way for more holistic assessment and more emphasis on values instead of focusing solely on exams and grades. Number two, STEM should be inclusive, skills-based and relevant. STEM is always a priority for us, but we are making it more inclusive so that it is not a pathway only for a select few. We recently launched a STEM for All initiative, in which we expand STEM access to those in the rural areas and those with special needs. Furthermore, related to the first point, we need to start asking ourselves how we are bringing value to humanity through education. Education is key in solving societal problems, and I believe there is so much in STEM learning that can also support that. We are not just equipping our students with scientific skills and the latest technology so that they can compete with robots, but we are guiding them towards designing and leading solutions for the future. That is how we are adapting our curriculum and pedagogy now so that teachers can facilitate a more meaningful and relevant type of learning in and out of the classroom. That is all from me, and I wish you a productive day ahead with the rest of the event. Take this opportunity to ask hard questions and network with similar-minded people. Best of luck. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and thank you.
A great message from the Education Minister, Mr. Mazli. Making education fun, making education inclusive, making education applicable to industry. We will end with this, and I will ask for closing comments on what the Education Minister mentioned, or in general on the conversations we've had. Please, Mr. Naka.
Well, thank you very much for giving me such an opportunity. And yeah, as Dr. Mazli said as well, yeah, it's important that the education is inclusive as well. And yeah, what I want to put on articulation here is that firstly, we need more participation in education, and also I believe that generalist education is important. Like the more technology advances, the more generalist education is becoming important. And yeah, that is because we need to nurture the students' ability of being compassionate to others and like think critically. And so all these kind of things will lead to the society's getting some idea of solution to the issues that is coming up in the new age. So I hope the education will be something that helps students to shine in the new age. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Mohammed Haji.
Well, my message to especially to this. Okay, they don't want me to speak. They say it's N. I'm just kidding. Well, my message to fellow student, don't complicate yourself into this new buzzword of technology, industry 4.0. No, it's all about evolutions, right? You have so far the best available infrastructure, technology, accessibility to the knowledge. And also don't worry about, there will be a job available in the future. Do your homework, understand what is your capability and what your country offer in terms of employment. Choose the right program, continue to learning. I'm very sure that you will find enjoyable and you will be successful. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, a round of applause for Mr. Naka and Mr. Mohammed Haji. Thank you very much to yourselves for being a very engaging audience. Thank you.